Hi, everyone. My name's Dr. Phillip Pulley. Quick question, if you guys wanted to throw it in, and I can see everyone popping in here on the chat over here, trying to do the two screen things here. And Zoom keeps putting things on different screens. So bear with me a minute. So this is 10 things to consider when moving to online instruction, which is something we've been doing since the spring. Quick question from you all, and I kind of was seeing in some of the other chats. If you're a pre-service teacher, let me know, and if a content area would be great. If you are someone already out in the profession, just kind of throw that in the chat right now. I should have done a poll, I guess, but we'll just do it that way. If you're pre-service, let me know. If you want to know, if you know what content area, that would be great as well. If you're teaching already, that's good to know as well. Social studies, 14 years. That's my area, content area, social studies as well. I'm at the high school. So first year teacher, Carly, ooh, good luck. Not a great year for first year. 6-year elementary, got science, math, 15 years, 5 years, 6 years. So kind of a good mix of everything. Preschool, elementary math, 28 years. Wow. That's slightly more than me. 33rd year, you win so far. 2nd through 4th grade. Well, I guess welcome everyone to the virtual version of the T21Con. I've been to these before, but it's a lot more fun in the Bone Center where you can kind of actually see everybody. I'll get my glasses off so there's no glare. And again, this is 10 things to consider when moving to online instruction. This is something we, of course, all had to do if you're in the profession in the springtime. I have also taught online classes, but most of the online classes I've taught have been college level classes. So a little bit different for me to do it with high school students, and a lot of different issues in terms of technology, and those are going to vary depending on where you're at. So we're going to look at some things to consider as well, if this will let me move on here. Okay, so it doesn't want to, there it goes. So a little bit about me in brief, just so you kind of know. I'm a high school social studies teacher, as I said earlier. I also teach communications. We do dual credit communications classes through Illinois Central College. I've been teaching a little over 25 years actually now, and so I have a doctorate in education, which focused on ed tech, professional development, and flipped classrooms. In fact, my dissertation was on flipped classrooms, which was kind of like something that was kind of, people were like, flipped classrooms, that was a fad. And then suddenly spring came along and everyone's like, flipped classrooms, there's an idea. Okay, we use the LMS Schoology at our school district, and I'm a Schoology ambassador. In fact, I was the 2018 Schoology Ambassador of the Year, which gives you that, basically that title, and a nice crystal little trophy thing, but there's no pay for that. My wife also is an educator. She taught over 12 years actually at the high school level in mathematics. She has as many years, if not more right now, teaching college and teaching future teachers as well. And we have 2 daughters, one of whom is a sophomore, if you're there at ISU at U High, and the other one is a senior. So she'll be graduating. Both of them want to go into engineering. So they are all way better at math than me. So 10 things to consider before online instruction, and just kind of run down the list here, and then we'll unpack each one of these individually and go that route. So the first of which is, we say Maslow before Bloom, and I'm sure everyone has heard that. Oh yes, 1 month with Schoology, pros, cons, so many questions. Yes, I will tell you what, I will, Savannah, if you're listening right now, I will give you my contact information here on the slides, and when you're done, please feel free to contact me. Sorry, a little side here. Schoology is overwhelmed, as is every LMS and Google and Classroom and everything else. It's with this move to remote learning for everyone is overwhelmed. So Maslow before Bloom, this idea of keeping in contact, and it's more important, but there's an idea of keeping in contact, but also with students and parents, don't overwhelm them. Okay, we'll talk about that. Why teaching? So for your pre-service teachers, why are you wanting to go into teaching? And for those of us who have been in the field for a while, think back, what was it that made us want to go into teaching? Why are we here? Why are we still doing this? What is our why? Keep it simple. My first degree is actually from Southern Illinois University. I have 3 from ISU, so it's okay. It's in radio and television, and we were always taught this idea of when you're writing messages, keep it simple, and we'll talk about that in terms of keeping it simple for online learning. Okay? Use what you know, and we'll talk about that with using what you know, but also hopefully what your students know as well. 6 here is this idea of trying to foster a growth mindset. This is a kind of a motivational thing, or getting our students involved in them wanting to get the work done versus us trying to make them do the work. Set goals and keep your end goals for your assignments for your class. What are your aims? What are the things you want to get done? And keep those things always in mind. Okay. Be organized. The easier it is for you to be organized and consistent, the easier it is for your students. And I will say that's also true that if your district or school can try and be as similarly organized, that's also even better for your students. Okay. But also in this time period, be flexible. I teach in a small rural district north of Bloomington Normal. We actually have 5 little towns that make up our district and a couple of little smaller unincorporated areas as well. So we have to be flexible because people say, oh, the internet companies are offering free internet. Well, not if that kid lives where there's 0 service at all. And think about not just being organized and supporting your students and Maslow before Bloom for your students, but also for you. Who's your support? Okay, who can you talk to? So, and I keep looking over the chat, and someone else from SIU. I'm actually from Southern Illinois. I grew up in Carterville, which is next to Carbondale. So, yay me. Okay, moving on here. Let's look first at this idea of Maslow before Bloom. If you were all in the class or we're all together in the same thing right now, I'd say, hey, how many of you have heard this before? And I would bet everyone would have their hands up right now, or at least hopefully everyone would have that. So let's kind of unpack what we're talking about here. This is the idea of Bloom, or Bloom's taxonomy. And this is the revised version where we're doing everything from remembering at the bottom and moving our way up to understanding, applying, analyze, evaluate, and creating at the highest level, which is sort of like, I can take this information and do new, different things with it. And so that's Bloom. But when we're saying Maslow before Bloom, the interesting thing here is we're talking about, we've got to make sure they're meeting things like their physiological needs, their safety needs, and their, especially, we talk about SEL, their belonging needs, if we're going to be able to get the content to them. If we have students who don't have internet, we're trying to get that to them. We have students who are free and reduced lunches, who the state again went back to where we can give free lunches now to all of our students because the state's paying for that. We had to stop that at the beginning of the year, whereas only the free reduced students got that. And now they've extended that again. So, the students, the only 2 meals they eat a day are breakfast and lunch here at school. What are they doing at home? So we've got to help meet some of those needs. And in terms of safety, it might be, who's at home with them. I teach high school, so most of my students are okay being at home, but they're also sometimes watching, younger siblings as well. So there's, safety and security needs there because they've got to run out and check on them. But the thing, especially for us, is that thinking about that belongingness, that not just intimate relationship, but the friends thing, or that sense of having a community. And that's kind of things that are important as well. And then we can try to get into some of those things in terms of, if I'm doing well, I can get some esteem out of that. Okay. And so moving on, so remember those needs, the social, emotional, SEL things we've talked about, social, emotional learning. So if we're not meeting that first part, we can't get to Bloom's taxonomy in there. But when we're starting, if we're meeting those things and we get to our course and content, we got to start thinking about things that are important for our course. I was just explaining before I got on here that I had another session after this, and I actually had another session that I had kind of put together, and I had mistakenly thought, and when I was revising earlier, I was revising that one instead of this one. And I was like, oh no, I forgot to, I did the wrong one here. And so that one I revised was actually one on, do we need more ed tech? And in it, I had some links that were interesting because they talk about the state of Illinois and the state of Illinois' website that says, here are things to consider and here are the core content and core standards to be focusing on now that we're in this situation that we're in right now. Okay. And then once we've got about the social emotional needs and the course and content needs, which is the taxonomy needs, then we look at the tech needs, okay? And in fact, there's a great article I just saw the other day in Edutopia. In fact, I want to have this slide set for you guys at the end. And this Edutopia article talked it was in fact entitled How to Maslow Before Bloom All Day Long. And it was like, great, I popped up in my feed just, I think yesterday or 2 days ago. I'm throwing that in the slides. So great thing to look at, Edutopia, great site of content as well. And so a friend of mine and I, Scott Noons out in California, and I developed this poster. I've got one hanging on my wall, and it should be also hyperlinked also. If you click on the hyperlink on the slide set when you get them later, this is actually hyperlinked to that article. This is actually hyperlinked. Yep, it was. Okay, it's actually hyperlinked. Now I did it. Okay, sorry about that. Present again, come on. It keeps throwing it on the wrong screen. Sorry about that. Okay, so we also had this poster. My friend of mine, Scott Noons, and I developed. This is actually also, I shouldn't have clicked on it. I actually was pressing too hard on the trackpad. This is hyperlinked to this Google image. If you would like to make a poster yourself for your classroom, please let me know. If you're nearby and don't have a poster printer, I could print one for you. So just let me know. All that for that. Okay, number 2 here, moving on. This is keeping in contact. So I always tell people, keep in contact with your students, keep in contact, keep in contact. But don't overwhelm them. And it can be overwhelming because they're getting bombarded by messages. They've got, things from the district, we have remote learning coordinators in every building. So they're getting things from the district. They're getting things from the building principals. They're getting things from remote learning coordinator. They're getting things from individual teachers. That's quickly going to overwhelm everybody. So figure out, who's going to be giving what messages and when, okay? So these things, Zoom, Meets, Teams, these are all great, but think about these things also in keeping in contact. Do I need them for everything? Okay. Will asynchronous work? I'm not sure how many of you are on Twitter. I had a woman on Twitter contact me the other day, and someone was talking about, a friend of mine that I'm connected with was talking about synchronous versus asynchronous. And there was she was like, I don't get it. These terms are so confusing and so pretentious. She goes, and that's coming from a mom and a lawyer. So I'm like, yeah, I mean, it's really live versus recorded. So do I need to have everything live in a Zoom or Meets or Teams meeting, or can I record some of that stuff and do it asynchronously, as we use as educational jargon? As a flipped classroom educator, I record a lot of my stuff, okay? But also that idea of centralized messages, who does them, okay, is the main thing. Main stuff, information should come from the school or district. In our case, there's big things that are overall for the school that the district puts out. If it's overall for the remote learners, that goes to our remote learning coordinator. If it's overall for all students in the building, it might come from our principal. Any course information, and only course information, should be coming from the teachers. And they've told us, hey, don't try to do maybe a small something every day, but anything big, don't do more than once a week at least. Okay. So again, moving on here, think about this idea of kind of why you want to become a teacher. Yeah, coach, it happens to all of us all the time. You should have been in the other day when our power went off like 5 times in the middle of one class. Think about why you became a teacher. So some of you are pre-service teachers and you want to become a teacher, and maybe just throw in really fast in the chat if you want to, what makes you want to be a teacher? Okay, and I'll kind of watch that as you throw those in and try and do this at the same time. Kids, okay, so why do you want to teach? Think about this idea, as I said, what is your why? Okay, and I kind of found out I was in radio and television. I love it when students grasp the concept. When that light bulb moment goes off, that's like the coolest thing. In fact, that's probably what got me into teaching. My first degree, as I said, was in radio and television. I worked at a media training center in Arecibo, Puerto Rico, and was training people. And I found I was doing more. In fact, I was in the Army before that. And I kept finding out that wherever I was at, I ended up being in the situation where I was teaching people things. And I realized it was the teaching that I liked, not necessarily the thing that I was doing. And so when I got my degree, I was in social sciences because I wanted to be able to do a wide variety of things so I wouldn't be bored, because too much interests me. And so I didn't want to limit myself into one kind of subject area. Okay, so we in it to teach, but also, as like you were saying, to help kids when they grasp that idea. Advocacy, someone has said, to help kids learn about the world around them. They can become active, informed citizens. That's always important. And as a social studies teacher, these are our standards that we have as well. We're in it to help the kids, okay? I provide help with them in mathematics because I have a wife who is a mathematics professor. Our oldest daughter is taking Calculus 3 at ISU right now. So they are way better at math than I am, but you know, my kids are struggling in lower level math. I help them all the time. And so regardless of subject area, we want to contribute to a better future for not just our students, but also for society as well. As someone said about this idea of active and informed citizens, we want everyone to be better at this, okay? So we're doing these things for students, we're doing it again for society. And again, as I said, did I mention SEL? This is something that when I started teaching all those years ago, we didn't talk about. We talked about discipline issues. You know, when kids were troublemakers who chewed gum or threw paper and didn't get it in the wastebasket. Or, I mean, I remember teachers who would write kids up for chewing gum in class, or for, you know, throwing a piece of paper basket and it missed and they didn't pick it up. And now it's like they've got bigger issues going on at home. And especially now if they're home, you know, alone, home remote, there are tons of issues that we need to be thinking about and not just requirements for my class. So in this way, we think about those things to inform what now should our requirements be in our class. Okay, what's really important. Okay, this is keep it simple. Again, I came from, it's not politically correct to say now, but what I came from, as I said, from a radio and television background, and we were told, keep it simple, stupid. And that's literally what like 5 professors told us all, you know, when you're writing this stuff, tell them what you're going to tell them what you told them. And so we have all these tools out there, you know, Google Suites, Google Classroom. If you're a Microsoft school, your Office 365 kind of stuff in OneDrive. Maybe using something like Class Dojo. Maybe use Edpuzzle for videos if you don't know what some of these are. Keep it simple, Sam. I was told, Matt, is now keep it simple, smart. Because we don't want to say the S word. A little story, I had a teacher who, if students said the word stupid in class, they got a 5-minute lunch detention with her. So keep it simple, Sam. Okay. So Edpuzzle, which is a program which lets you take videos and then add questions to them, and it's kind of pause the video as you go along, and you can track their progress and how long they spend on it. Nearpod is out there. I mean, there's all kinds of things. Flipgrid, which a lot of teachers do, and it's great. I can tell you, my daughters, who are both high school students, feel like their teachers are way overusing it, and they literally hate it right now. And I don't use it with teachers in my district. I kind of tell them I avoid that. We have an LMS, and with that LMS, kids can record the messages in there. The problem with Flipgrid, it was taking so long to upload on their servers because they were so busy. My daughter would record one and then upload it, and it would take her 3 to 5 hours sometimes of trying and retrying before it would actually get uploaded and saved. And she's like a person who wants it done as soon as the assignment's there, and so she can have it done and off her plate. And she was freaking out over Flipgrid. Quizlet is out there. I also know the student, if you guys don't know if you heard of, there's a high school student, I believe he's graduated now, who created a thing called GimKit, but also like Kahoot, which is kind of like a Kahoot, only you can get points and redeem those points to do things. Again, we are a Schoology district, and there are also free versions of Schoology and Canvas also. In fact, for my other presentation that I had that I'm not doing, I mistakenly did, has some examples from Canvas. And I still have a free Canvas account because Canvas and Schoology both have free accounts, or basic accounts as they call them. Okay. But keep it simple. All of these things, if you're throwing all these things at them, if you're doing, even if you're doing just classroom, if you're throwing out Kahoots and Edpuzzles and Flipgrids and Seesaws and a whole bunch of other things, you can be overwhelming your students, okay? So think about tools in this case versus messages. Don't try to do too much, especially now, okay? We don't want to overwhelm them. There's already a lot emotionally on their plates, okay? I always tell my media students that less is more. And we have a sort of talent competition every year called Mr. and Mrs. Fieldcrest. And I always tell them when they write these little skits, I'm like, stop there. And they're like, but we got these other things, like either take something else out to add the other things in, leave them kind of, you know, wanting more, I guess, so to speak. Don't, again, if you think maybe you've been doing too many math problems in your math assignments already when you're in school and you're thinking about cutting them back, definitely think about cutting them back now. Okay, this might be the good impetus, and don't necessarily consider that you have to put them all back in again when you get back in class. Pick the ones that actually have them practicing and measuring what it is they actually need to be doing in your thing. A single platform if possible. Again, we are a school district, which is nice. Interestingly, this is our 5th year with Schoology, and we were supposed to be in Schoology from 6/12. And literally, this is the first year that the vast majority of our middle school teachers, now we have a new principal, that the vast majority of them are actually using Schoology. And since we don't have tech integration specialists in our district, I'm the one that has to go down there and teach them how to do this on kind of my own time. Okay, so anything you can kind of do. The thing I like about an LMS, like a Schoology, like a Canvas, like an It's Learning, is that you can take a lot of these other things that are out there and pull it right into that platform. So instead of sending kids a link to a video in YouTube, they're actually watching that video in your platform, and they don't have to worry about them running down that rabbit hole of suggested videos or getting involved in a flame war. So, okay. So this kind of ties right into the next one, number 5 here, which is use what you know, and not just what you know. Okay, so again, we have all these things as well. Don't try to learn a lot of new programs and apps. Use what you already know. And importantly, you know, if you're already using a few, that's great. Do you really need something else? One of the nice things about some things like some of the LMSs is like, I don't use Flipgrid because my students, I can put a discussion in, I can put a question in assignments or in test quiz or assessments, and I can say, hey, respond and record your answer, and I can turn on the audio and video, and their responses can be that way. If they don't want to respond by audio and video, they can type an answer. So that's some nice things that are there. If you need more, think about, do I really, as I said, what are your needs? Do I really need this, or am I just adding technology for the sake of adding technology, or I'm adding something that, you know, is really going to help them? If you are going to add something, see what others in your building that share your students are using as well, because A, they can mentor you on it, and B, then if they're using it with the same students that you have, guess who already knows it, is already familiar with it? Your students. You're not adding to their cognitive load of trying to add some new thing if they've already used it before. Okay, so if it's what the students already know, life will be a lot easier for them as well. Now we're going to talk about this idea of a sort of a growth mindset. This is this idea that trying to get the students, you know, wanting to learn for, you know, intrinsic, you know, internal reasons versus external reasons, like my parents will be mad if I don't pass my class. My parents will be mad if I don't get an A. We want them to think about, I want to learn all I can from this because it will help me be a good citizen, or whatever their motivation is, or so that maybe that boy next to me will think I'm smart and leave me alone, or maybe he'll think I'm smart and he'll like me, or other way around. Okay, so a growth mindset here is this, you know, we see failure as it's growth mindset versus a fixed mindset. And you may have heard the idea of, you know, fail as in fail forward. People say that failure is like the first attempt in learning. And so if you fail, that's okay, then, you know, do it again. But do it again by stopping and thinking, what do I need to do to fix why I failed the first time. That's where innovation takes place. That's where learning takes place, is learning from our mistakes. Okay, if you go back and make the same mistake again, or as they say, do the same thing over and over again, expect different results, that's sort of one definition of insanity. So we oftentimes in school have this, and our students especially have this idea, this fixed mindset that I'm not good at something. I'm good at something or I'm not good at something. When we were all in kindergarten, we were all great artists. We drew and didn't care, and we colored, and you know, your parents would say, why is that person green? You know, and they don't feel good. Oh, then there's, you know, and we did whatever we wanted to do, and we were all great artists. And this way we get along, we started being shown what was great art and good things. We're like, I can't do that. And so we get the idea that I can't do that. Okay. And it's the idea of what is it you want to do? And I can learn these things. If any of you have heard of Michael Cohen, the tech rabbi, he has a poster that you can order that says, he talks about fail. And instead of saying fail forward, he has a thing that's called failure, which is first attempt in learning unless reflection exists. And so you can't fail forward unless you reflect on why things kind of went bad there, okay? So think about things that will help the students, you know, to learn, to grow. This, again, social emotional kind of things as well, reward and praise effort. If they're wrong, don't tell them, hey, you're wrong. Tell them, try and tie it in and kind of see the positive. I can see where you're going with that, but I'm looking for something else, or, you know, that's kind of, you're in you know, you're in the ballpark, but I'm trying to find something a little more specific. Can we, you know, focus this in a little bit? Think about things the way I can kind of praise instead of saying that's wrong, okay? More than normal than in this kind of situation where the students are, even for us, we have students here every day, and we didn't do because we're a small district, we didn't do, and 5 little towns, we didn't do the split where, you know, my daughters are green and gold, so the green group will come when they start again, will come Tuesdays and Thursdays, and the yellow group, gold group will be, one will be Monday, Wednesday, one will be Tuesday, Thursday, and then Fridays, everyone's remote. And on the days that you're not physically in the building, you're in via Zoom or whatever platform the teacher decides to use. Well, this is a situation, we have all students here, we're just doing an even and odd schedules, but it means I have all my students in my class, which means, you know, things aren't normal. Kids are all sitting here in masks. I'm wearing a mask, and I feel every day like, you know, I did my COVID check in the morning and I feel fine. I didn't have a sore throat. And now that the day's over, I have a headache and I have a sore throat because I've been yelling into a mask all day. Okay. So this is important. And again, that idea of that praising things as opposed to saying, no, that's not right. If I can kind of tie it in and kind of say, you're close, I'm trying to do whatever, this again helps support that social, emotional kind of ideas. Okay. Okay. Number 7 here, apparently I have my thing wrong on here. So this is transitioning to online again. This is kind of like the how part here. Keep that end goal in mind. Okay. And again, I will go back and add some of those links that I had on my other slide set in here. What is your why? Okay, what are your objectives? What's my goal for this you know, lesson or this activity or this assignment? What is it I want them to get out of it? And so in that, keep those objectives in mind, whether they're guided by district, you know, goals and you know, school improvement kind of goals, or by national standards or state standards, keep those in mind. As again, I said, what I want to put on there is the state of Illinois has issued several things of saying, here are the essential standards, I think, of the standards that are out there. These are the ones we think you should be focusing on in your content area, you know, and grade level, to kind of being in this situation that we're now, where everyone's going to be, you know, somewhat gone and somewhat, you know, sometimes here. And there's also students with all kinds of issues in terms of internet and other things like that. So keeping that end goal in mind, because what is essential in terms of what we're doing to help them, you know, get to that end goal, okay? What's essential to help them learn and what isn't? And if it isn't, why are we doing it? Because we've always done it. This is kind of one of the things I don't like about what we're doing right now in terms of my other presentation was called, do we need more ed tech or more ed tech training? So maybe next year. And in that one is the idea of, we often do training just like we're doing now, which is sit and listen to someone talk at you and maybe get a few questions back and forth. And that is, you know, for 45 minutes, That's not what No Child Left Behind said training should be. That's not what ESSA says training should be. Every Student Succeeds Act says this should be ongoing and personalized and content level specific and grade level specific. And so this is kind of wrong, but I'm kind of thinking about just things to think about to go back to your districts and teams. Although now it's October, and we should have had these conversations back in March and April, but we can always reflect on what we're already doing and say, how can we make things better? Okay, so if it's not helping, why are we doing it? Okay. Actually, I did put some of these in here. So keep that end goal in mind here. The state information. Oh, I did have them in this. I have them in 2 sessions. Okay, so good for you guys. Okay, so state information. The state coronavirus page is on there. That's this back to school page. Again, this is hyperlinked to that. I was wrong. I did have it in there. And there's also their fall learning recommendations. That is that. Some things to think about in terms of how to do things when you're in school, and their guidelines. For example, it talks about, having the students socially distanced. I'm looking at my classroom right now, and I have curtains behind me because my classroom was built in 1938. And if I showed you the wall, you would all be like, how come the plaster's crumbling off your wall? And if I turn and face the back of the classroom, then the classroom lights glare everything out. So this is why I'm sitting here. But in their recommendations, they have a lot of information there talking about how to do things. My students cannot physically sit in my classroom if it's a full class and be 6 feet apart, which is why I look at their standards. A lot of it is, or as much as possible. If I had $1 for every time they use that phrase in that, well, I'd still have to keep working. So look at their guidance, look at their learning standards. This is their priority learning standards here. So these are hyperlinked. I'll have a URL at the end here. I've gotten some of my transitions messed up. Anyway, moving on here, because I want to give some time for people to ask questions as well, is be organized, okay? Do things that help students find materials. In fact, I do have another session after that, and the one after this is called How to Visualize and Organize Your Online Content. And I'll be giving examples in Schoology and Canvas and Google Classroom. So just, if you want to stick around for that one, it's coming up next. Helping students find materials is always important, okay? Make things clear, be consistent, okay? And my courses are very consistent across them. My units are consistently laid out in terms of, here are the materials for the unit, here are the daily questions for the unit, here's the study guide for the unit, here are the tests for the unit, here are the videos that you watch. My lecture videos are actually interspersed in with the reading things that they have to do, or the other video questions that they might have to watch. They might have to watch this video and respond to some questions. They might have to read something and respond to questions. And then my content lecture videos are broken up and are in there as well. And I can stack them in to a folder and say, do all these things and do them, you must submit this, you must view this, you must do that. And I can make them sequential so that they have to do one to get to the next one. So I can keep them not only doing things in an order that I think is the best order for them to do that, but it's also a way that I can allow them to put it out there from the beginning of the unit. They can work ahead. If you want to work ahead in my classes, either in school or at home, feel free. But what's important is that layout is clear to not just to you, but to them, and that it's consistent then throughout the units and throughout the year. Okay. So again, in my materials, you can see unit 12 and unit 11 there, because I had one was current and one was the one right before it. And you can see the unit assignments, unit materials, unit videos, everything's in there the same. There's a home page, is the first item in that unit folder every time. It's consistency that helps them always find things. For my students in the spring, when we went fully online, it was no big deal. They knew exactly what they had to do to keep going. And I said, hey, some of these extra things that I did for my student learning objectives, my SLOs, I pulled those out because we were told we don't have to do them anymore. So I pulled them out and said, hey, cutting some extra extension things out. I said, I'll put them over in this other folder. If you still want to do them, you can, but they're not required. And so that's always important, is, keeping that things consistent for the students. Okay. And visuals can help, and they provide a multi-path option as well. They can be both representative and organizational. And to give an example, this is my course actually in Schoology. So let me go, let me go back here. So this is the folder here, but if you were to click on the folder, it would actually have an icon, an image that actually represents that folder and a little description. And that kind of then represents and tells them a little bit about it. But it's also somewhat organizational because not just that link of clicking on the folder, but that image becomes part of the link. So students with touch screens or students that I have that have fine motor skill issues and they're trying to touch and they're touching on the wrong thing, that makes their target bigger to try and get at. Okay, but also up here, these things are hyperlinked to other things in Schoology. This goes to the unit resources. This is the daily assignments. That's the textbook, study guide. So again, these things are representative and organizational. I'll talk more about that if you're interested in the next section. Okay, so be flexible. Okay, delivery of content, give options. And for us, it was really important for us to not worsen inequity. We are a one-to-one district. This is actually our 11th year, even though we're a small rural district, 11th year one-to-one. And we have teachers who do some phenomenal things. But when I think of all the potential for what we could be doing after having done this for 11 years, because we don't have a tech integration person and someone trying to teach them consistency, it's kind of all over the map for the students. Or the fact that this is our 5th year and our middle school teachers are just now beginning to use the LMS that our district has. But in terms of lessening inequity, our students have free and reduced lunch. I mean, I have students who don't have internet. In February, I was talking to our tech director about we need to find some way to get some hotspots, because I've been talking about this since we went one-to-one 11 years now ago, and said this is an issue. And I've been bringing it up every year as an issue. And then in February, I'm like, this is gonna be a huge issue. And they were like, okay. And then they didn't really do anything in the spring, mostly because the state said you can't harm their grades. And so we literally had students who said, I've got an A, I'm done. Well, okay, the A kids kept doing stuff, but kids who had a C are like, I have a C, and if I don't do anything, I still get a C. They did nothing. The ones that really hurt me were the ones who had an F. Like I had a student who was 2 percentage points below passing, and he could have done anything and raised his grade. We called, we emailed, everything. And this is a kid whose parents wanted weekly reports on the kid. They stopped communicating, kids stopped communicating, but we don't know what's going on at home. I don't know if parents lost their job. I don't know if he's now having to live with grandparents. We don't know. It's sad to me that he didn't do anything and could have passed, but I don't know what happened. Maybe they lost their jobs and lost their internet access and weren't getting any of this information that we sent home. Okay, so don't lessen inequality. I had a student who was literally just gone for a couple of weeks, and they don't have internet at home. And mom sent me an email, and it was sad. She's a mom of 3 kids, and they're divorced, and husband quit paying child support and can't afford internet anymore. And because they live in a rural area where their only option is satellite internet, which is really expensive. And so I'm like, I get it. So I'm taking my lectures and putting them on the flash drives and sending them home. I'm sending home paper copies of the text and paper copies of the reading questions, saying, here, do these. At least if we do these things, that'll get you ready for the test, and you can watch the videos through the flash drive, because we've given you all Chromebooks, so we know you've got that, and they can at least do that. Okay. Again, my wife and I are both educators. We have 2 daughters. In the springtime, we had to spend and finally get our internet upgraded, because no more than one of us could Zoom at a time without kicking everyone else off. Okay. Hotspots, again, I've mentioned already. I mentioned we did packets. We did some Google folders, which works if they can access it on their phone. Remember, not everyone has unlimited data, so be careful with that. I have a lot of my students who have a finite amount of data, and then they have to wait till mom and dad get home in the evening to go on and use their phone or use their parents' phone as a hotspot, which still isn't great to access some things. So even though they have a device, they can't always use it. Again, I talked about USB drives, and again, we have devices, but some students may not have devices. A lot of schools are in situations where the kids are home, and it's like there's one computer and there might be 3 to 5 kids at home. What do you do then? Okay. Think in mind in terms of universal design for learning. Okay, UDL, which came out of the Citizens with Disabilities Act. Give them multiple paths, give them multiple options for things. So that's what we're trying to do with offering different ways of completing the same assignment, some alternative assignments to do instead. In my visual things, I give them, there are 4 ways they can get to a daily assignment. okay, including a home page that has an embedded Google Doc of the whole calendar laid out for that unit. And within that laid out calendar, every little assignment is hyperlinked back to the assignment in the LMS. It's a lot of work. So universal design for learning is this idea of terms of providing a supportive environment, minimizing efforts, not just physical efforts, but in our case also physical in terms of do they have access to internet and those kinds of things. So think about things I can do to be flexible, all these kind of things we've mentioned already in terms of accommodations. How can I help them out? And it's kind of like, as I do flipped classrooms, John Bergman once said, that flipped classroom idea is like every kid has a 504 because I can be more personalized with them because they're flipping the instruction. I have more hands-on time with them when they're in the classroom, except now I can't go up and do hands-on kind of stuff with them as much. But the idea, think of everyone having a 504 without the paperwork kind of idea. So deadline options, for example, think about what considers late work. We had for our remote learners, they technically started a little over a week and a half after the other students started. So they had like a week and a half time and they kept whittling it down. And now technically they're supposed to be 1 day behind or within 1 day time frame, but it's not always the same case, because sometimes that kid is like, they're remote, but I get messages from parents. Okay, they were doing some construction work in town and they just cut our internet and they hope to have it up by Wednesday. I get the email that was on Monday. Now it was Thursday night, last night when I was home, and I got the, hey, just want to let you know our internet is finally now back up and running. So, I mean, they lost a week. So if I'm not going to mark it down for 1 day, but that's again about that communication, and it's kind of a two-way street. They've got to let us know what's going on as well. Okay. So again, what is late work? Again, go back and look at the state guidelines. Again, this biggest idea is probably that idea of being flexible. Okay. If they're putting forth an effort, work with them. That's kind of the easiest way to kind of put it, I think. Okay. And we've been talking about schools and districts and providing things for students as well. I want to tell you also, think about who's your support. Okay. So keep that in mind. We're doing new methods. It used to be our colleagues were the person down the hall, or in our departments, if we have departments at our schools. So think about these things. Well, it used to be our neighbor across the hall. Well, now it's not. I mean, on Twitter, I have people who connect with from around the world. Through Schoology, I get asked questions from people in the Middle East, from people across the United States. I've got a school district in New South Wales, Australia, that copied the template from my course and told the teachers, this is how you need to be organizing your courses, or some way, along this manner, that you need to have either by chapters or by units or by weeks or whatever it is, you need to be organizing stuff in a way that's consistent for your students. And in fact, I had one course that they said, we just developed this course, and I'm like, take all the stuff. So, we also have, departments, that are in things here, interdepartmental colleagues. We also have tech support people. And sometimes that's the tech person, and sometimes that's the techie person across the hall, or it's a techie person I can hop onto Twitter and say, help, and admins as well. So we're all interconnected through various types of social media, whatever they are. I use Twitter, or what I call edu Twitter, and not so much just the, there's some Facebook groups that they started for Schoology support, and I couldn't go there anymore because, like a lot of Facebook, they were so toxic. These are people who were new, who had the platform thrown at them, and they didn't get the amount of training they should have, or it's kind of like they gave them like this very basic interview and said, good, go, which is how we should not do ed tech training. And then they were all mad because they couldn't figure something out. And I'm like, they weren't even shown where resources were. But I mean, they were asking for help, but they were asking in this so negative, toxic manner. They were blaming it on the platform, when I'm like, really the problem is you weren't trained. It's not the platform's fault. So that's often the case. Okay. Who is your PLN, your personal learning network, your personal learning team, your personal learning community, whatever you want to call that, your PLC? These are the folks who might be not necessarily anywhere near you, but these are your digital support and can oftentimes give you instant answers. This is my Schoology group here. This is my support ELN. I could name all these people to you. Some of them are not even Schoology users anymore because they've moved on to different roles. But we literally have a chat group that someone posts and says, hey, how about this? And everything from secondary to elementary to Schoology specific to some other kind of platform that we're trying to integrate in. So these are the folks. In fact, this is Scott, the guy who helped me design the poster. Actually, it was more his design. It was our ideas, and he kind of actually then we talked about and had the sort of the outline. And he actually did the visual part of it. So it's more of Scott's job than me. But all these people, I mean, these are the folks I need. I mean, sometimes in your district, you might feel like the person who everyone comes to you for help. And well, who's helping you if you're helping everyone else? Who's supporting you? And in my case, it's not people in the district, it's people outside my district across the United States. So by the way, this is Rick with this is the little thing I got for being Ambassador of the Year. He's currently the Ambassador of the Year, so just so you know. Okay, other things to support you. Schoology, this is Schoology specific, not necessarily. They have a distance learning readiness kit that if you click on this and get it, it will take you to a bunch of support things that are not necessarily just Schoology related. There are things to think about, some of the things I've talked about with how do I adjust things, how do I adapt things, how do I be flexible, how do I organize things. ISTE literally just had a thing the other day pop up in their feed for me called 10 strategies, and that's linked to that article. 10 strategies, again, like mine, 10 things to think about for online. Cult of Pedagogy, Jennifer Gonzalez, if you haven't did that, literally had a distance learning thing in there, and I have that's actually linked to one particular article, but then there's also within there a whole bunch of other things as well that talk about some things. Okay. Again, that Schoology distance learning kit, just kind of want to show you there's a video series in there. They've got a worksheet on things of ways to agree, disagree with things. And these are discussion kind of things, but it's from Schoology, from PowerSchool, but it's not PowerSchool, Schoology specific. So you can use that for other things. Little tips for video conferencing for, that maybe you need something like that for your school or students as well. And again, they've got more things in there. I've actually done some webinars for them. In fact, half these people here, again, are people that I know who are other Schoology ambassadors. So at this point, I'm going to stop here and open up to some Q&A. If you want to throw them in the chat, my Q&A is not showing up here correctly. I'm not sure why. I've got on here, if you want to get to this bit.ly T21 10 things, that gets you to this slide set. So it does have the things in there. On Twitter, I am at Phillip Pulley. My chat is showing up, but the Q&A for me is not showing up. I'm not sure why. Let me go back here. Okay, I've got no question there. There, wait, it finally came up. So any question anyone has, you can throw it either into the chat itself and just throw it out there to everybody, or in the Q&A, and we'll try and get to those. Those of you, I don't see any in there. Yeah, I found it now. There is one in the chat. Will we be able to access all the meetings or just the ones we attended today? That's not a question for me. I'm assuming they're all gonna be recorded, and probably my guess is would be posted on that same page where the links are, and I'm seeing yes. So. Other questions? If you're some of the people who said, hey, that you like Schoology or you're using Schoology and want some help, please let me know. Yes, again, if you go right down here at the bottom where it says on the screen, the bit.ly T21 10 things, that will take you right to it. So let me just actually type it in here really quickly. If it will let me get over to that. There it goes. So that would get you to that. Rochelle asked, can these programs be adapted to teach special ed students, or can they? That's actually one of the great things about a platform like Schoology. And I know you can do this in Canvas as well, because I have some friends who are Canvas users, which is why I keep my free Canvas account. Shh, don't tell Schoology because I'm not an ambassador. But I do a thing where it's literally, I do modified versions of tests, and we have an aide, and so I can assign grading groups. So I actually have grading groups for I call A testing and B testing. The students get the test that's assigned to them. They have no idea that their test is different than somebody else's, but the students who get modified tests get modified versions of the tests. I can record the reading on there, so I don't have to have an aide read it to them if we don't want to. Some of the students would rather have it read to them. Others would rather just listen to it on headphones. So those things I can do. I can modify the questions. I can modify the content. I can modify the number of assignments. I can modify, everything and put it in these different sort of grading groups. And by doing that, the student never knows they're still working on the questions for this chapter and section, and they're working on the chapter and section, but they don't quite realize that somewhat are somewhat different. So they get different options for each. So I think in a way, that's one great example of having an LMS. A question about cluster students. I'm not sure what you mean by cluster students. Can you explain that for me, or? This is, again, kind of a thing what I can actually do also. I know in Schoology, which is a little tougher with, like classroom, where it's kind of hard to kind of assign it to specific students within the class. But I can go in and say, hey, here's some extension activities that are just going to this one student, or to this group of students who need additional supports or additional information things or modified things. So we can do those kinds of things with that. And again, I know Canvas can do that as well. Both of those, by the way, have free versions. They're not as robust as the full enterprise or districts school versions, but they offer some great tools beyond what you can do with, say, a Google Classroom, which has made lots of improvements in the past few years, but is not a learning management system. It's sort of a stream of things that are out there.
Thank you so much, Dr. Pulley, for taking time out of your very full schedule to share your knowledge and experience with us today.
You're welcome.
Attendees, I just have a few housekeeping items to share with you. The schedule I posted in the chat, or a link to the schedule in the chat again. There will be a survey emailed after the conference. We would love to hear your feedback. There are PD credits available through ROE 17. You must attend the whole conference in order to receive the credit, as partial credit will not be given. So to request those credits, there's a form on the T21 website. And I also put our email address out there if you have any questions during the conference. Thank you so much for attending, and hope you have a great day.